You're listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCC LP Conroe, and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, good afternoon. You're listening to the Lone Star Community Radio, and this is the Texas AgriLife Extension Hour. My name is Jim Buncho, and I'm here with Mike Mendick and Megan McNairn. She is with the township, the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department. Mike Mendick is a master gardener out at the Extension Office, and I'm also a master gardener. And today we're going to be talking about irrigation, rainwater harvesting, and mosquito abatement. So welcome. Thank you for listening. And we're going to have a good time today. Mike and I were talking on our way in. We were talking about just water conservation in general. And curiously, water conservation and mosquitoes go hand in hand because mosquitoes breed in water.
They sure do.
So Megan, how are we going to have a nicely watered, green, healthy lawn and keep the mosquitoes away?
Well, the first thing you can do is definitely make sure that you're not overwatering that lawn or allowing any of that precious water to accumulate for 7 days or more, which is what mosquitoes need to complete one life cycle when it's real hot here.
So that kind of comes back to the same premise. Are you overwatering your lawn, or are you underwatering and your lawn is dying? And everyone is very conscious of that nice green lawn. Mike has a background in rainwater harvesting, and actually we've got some programs coming up on rainwater harvesting. We've got one next weekend, don't we, Mike?
We have one on the 11th, and it's for large tank development. I think that it's on our website, and they can check it out there.
Right. I think it's Friday the 11th. Right. Pre-registration is required. You go to the Montgomery County AgriLife Extension Office website or MCMGA website and take a look at it there.
That's correct.
And Megan, you've got some programs coming up too, don't you, on water conservation?
Yeah, we have a great Smarter About Water seminar coming up on Saturday. There's still spaces. Pre-registration is required. You can do that through the Woodlands Township website. If you go to the Woodlands Township-tx.gov and click on the calendar, you should be able to find it. And it's a great free program. You don't have to be a resident of the Woodlands to participate.
Free is always good.
Free is good.
Another thing I want to mention about an upcoming event, we have an Open Gardens Day at the AgriLife Extension Office, which is at 9020 Airport Road here in Conroe. It's an open garden day. It goes from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock this Saturday.
From 9 to 11.
9 to 11 this Saturday.
So it's only 2 hours.
Okay. So it's a short period of time, but basically we open the doors. Public is invited. Grandchildren are most welcome because kids and garden go hand in hand. And we'll have everything from vegetable gardens to the greenhouses, aquaponics, herb gardens. All of those will be available for your touring.
And rainwater harvesting as well.
Rainwater harvesting as well.
Especially if it rains tomorrow.
Well, if it does rain, they've got some preliminary plans to move into the education center there on premises. So, but do try to stop by, and it'll be a good time had by all.
If I can add.
Sure.
We're also going to have, for those that have rain barrels at home and they're interested in how to set up the rain barrel for a self-cleaning operation so you don't have to scrub it out once a year, particularly after the pollen comes in. We'll have that. We have a cutaway barrel, and it shows how to set this up. I think the cost is only about $10 to $15 to set it up. And that way, once you set this up, you won't have to wash the inside of it out. It takes care of itself. It's quite a good way to do it.
Well, and rainwater harvesting is one way that we can supplement our watering needs and perhaps prevent a little bit of ponding in our yards, and put the water to the best use it can instead of just running off into the driveway or into the storm sewers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, if I can also add for rainwater harvesting, if you're interested in that, we have 6 projects out at the extension, 6 separate projects. And we can hold a total of about 17,000 gallons of water, which is about the size of a normal average swimming pool. Give you an idea how much water we can collect. We use that for a variety of ways, primarily for irrigation, but we also use it for the aquaponics supplemental water for the tilapia and the herb gardens that are in there, as well as for flushing the commodes in our education center. So we've got a variety of things to show people if they're interested.
That's one of the curious things about the extension office. We're one of the few buildings, I think, in the county that are actually flushing their toilets with rainwater, as well as doing drip irrigation with it. Megan, you were talking earlier about mosquitoes and how they breed and their typical life cycle. If I'm irrigating my lawn and I seem to have pots, or I seem to have a mosquito problem, what would be one of the things that I would look for to eliminate or minimize the mosquitoes in my yard from irrigation?
Well, from irrigation, like we mentioned before, if it's ponding or if it's flooding into other structures, definitely you want to look low in these cryptic spots, like your meter box can often be flooded at the front of your house from excess water. You don't realize it's going down there, but it's the perfect spot for mosquitoes to breed because it's got one tiny little hole and the adults fly in there, and the no natural predators can really get in there. And so you can have thousands of mosquito larvae in that meter box if it's continually wet.
What about French drains around your property? Do you see any problem in French drains holding a little bit of water also?
We sure do. Usually French drains also have a bit of a grading issue where there will be some little dip. And of course you can't see that, so you don't know that it's there. But that's a really good location or opportunity to use mosquito dunks, which are really one of the best tools we have in the toolkit. They are very specific to just mosquito larvae, and they don't harm other aquatic wildlife. They don't harm your kids, your pets. If you want to put it in your bird bath, it actually has no effect on birds. So really, it's only killing mosquito larvae, and it's doing a great job in those places where you can't necessarily tell if you have that standing water, like in a French drain system. They do float, so you have to tie them off. But if you find the highest point in that French drain system and tie one off to a string, and just make sure you check it about every month. If you still see it, it's still working, and it'll treat all the water that runs past it downstream, and it'll also survive a wet-dry cycle between rains or irrigation events. So they're fantastic. Yeah. And you can get them at any big box store, Walmart, Home Depot. Look in the pesticide section, and definitely read the label. The label is the law.
So the generic name is just the mosquito dunks, and it's actually Bacillus thuringiensis, I think is the active chemical that's within it, or BT.
It's a naturally occurring bacteria. And exactly. So it's shortened to BT. Some gardeners might be familiar with BTK. It's used for caterpillars, which are very specific to caterpillars. This one's BTI, very specific to mosquito larvae.
In rainwater harvesting, Mike, what issues have you seen with mosquitoes getting into rain barrels that are unprotected? People see a 55-gallon drum underneath their downspout. Even though that is collecting a little bit of water, it can be a mosquito breeding ground also.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people collect rainwater without realizing it, and it might be an old coffee can sitting out in their yard or something like that. So they do have to be careful. Or an old tire, right? Yeah. But for those of us that are serious about collecting rainwater, and we have barrels set up, the biggest thing is to make sure that you have them properly screened.
Yeah.
And these are things we can talk about it when you come out to see us tomorrow, or anytime stop by the extension. There is also a lot of information on different websites. You can just search mosquito screens and rain barrels or something like that, and that'll come up. But stop by the extension. We've got a lot of things.
You make a good point. The extension office is one of those, best kept secrets of Montgomery County. There's the wealth of information, whether it's from 4-H to Master Gardener programs to, pond stocking.
And
wonderful resource.
It's interesting because I work the phone rooms as well for the help desk for people that have questions about gardening. And what we found frequently is after people have talked to their neighbors or they've talked to their relatives or their friends and they haven't got a satisfactory answer, then they call us as kind of the point of last resort. and they're really ready to listen. And we've got a staff that if we don't know the answer, we can do the research and get back to them.
Yeah.
And that's a good point to make, is that it's all research-based information. So it's not somebody's best guess. It's got some science behind it to really have a lot of confidence against that recommendation.
Well, the basic concept we're trying to get across here is not only in water conservation that it is a precious resource, but it's also how we can effectively manage the water that falls onto our own property. And effective management means not having ponding water, yet letting the trees and trees and shrubs benefit by that water as best they can without adding additional groundwater. Because we do have an issue with just continuing to pump groundwater, thinking there's no limit to it. So as you start looking at your irrigation schedules, as people start asking how long should I be running it, one of the best things you can do is just go out there and systematically turn the system on zone by zone, walk your property, make a map of the zones, and look for those broken heads, or look for those heads that are bent, that are spraying into the street, and eliminate that. If you don't feel confident doing it yourself, ask someone with, as an irrigator to come out and take a look at it. But about 80%, 90% of the homeowners are fully qualified to at least make those simple adjustments. And that's going to prevent the ponding and the mosquito breeding grounds that we're concerned about. Anything else you want to add, Mike, about rainwater?
A couple of things. One of the ways you can reduce the chances of having a mosquito problem around your property, in addition to collecting rainwater, which is called an active rainwater harvesting program, where you're collecting and storing it for events or use between rain events. What you can also do is what we call a passive rainwater harvesting approach or program. Basically, what we try to do there is set the rainwater so that it comes off your overflow off your rain barrel, or it comes off your downspouts, and we direct that into different areas of the yard. Or you set up your yard, for example, where you might have a hilly area. You could add some stones, pavers, or whatever, and build it up so you have a terrace. Terraces are a lot flatter than hills, and the water will slow down and settle into your terrace.
Right, it's almost like creating an eyebrow or a smile at the edge of the tree bed that it slows it down.
That's another form of terrace. You're right. In addition to the long terraces, you can take the approach, and they do this frequently in Arizona and New Mexico, where rainwater is very sparse. What they'll do is on the downhill side of a tree or shrub or bed, they'll set up a little dam that catches the water as it comes across the landscape. It holds that water there, and you can build it. You can add some mulch or things like that, but it gives it a chance to stay there a little bit longer than it would if it just rolled off. Two benefits or three benefits. One is that it's reducing the amount of erosion and allowing water to soak in the ground. And additionally, it's not washing away all the maybe people put down fungicides or herbicides, not herbicides, but fungicides or pesticides around their plants or fertilizers. By slowing the water down, you're not washing it away. You're holding it in place, and you have less pollution, as well as the volume of water going into the street is a lot less.
Right. And as an irrigator, I look at the piece of property and I say, well, if they're not allowing that water to soak in, it's just simply running off down into the streets. It's just a waste of time and effort and money all the way around. And
it's also great mosquito breeding grounds. All that extra irrigation that you're paying for, that's going down into the storm sewer.
Yeah,
it's filling up those catchments at the bases of the system, where normally it would flush through with rain events. If you're continually putting municipal water down there, it's also breeding mosquitoes. And because the other thing that ends up down there is a whole bunch of organic matter in the form of leaves and grass clippings and things blown in off the street. And that is what mosquito larvae need to grow and eat. And so it's just this great little system down there, this great habitat. So we'd really love for people to stop feeding into that system, because that's where they overwinter. It's cooler in the summer, it's warmer in the winter. Okay. And we need to reduce those populations also.
Okay, well, we'll be back in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to the Lone Star Community Radio. This is the Extension Hour. Thank you very much.
Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service is all about extending knowledge and providing solutions. We do that by using science-based information to create high-quality and relevant education for the people of Texas. More importantly, this outstanding education is delivered locally, right here in our county. We encourage lasting and effective change that helps our communities and our county thrive. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Health Center Southeast Texas is a federally qualified health center. We accept Medicare, Medicaid, and most major private insurances. For our self-pay patients, we have a sliding scale discount program available. Our health centers have qualified providers and staff striving every day to provide the best quality of care to our patients. Services offered are family medicine, behavioral health services, telepsychiatry, and pediatrics. We have 4 area locations. Look up the Health Center Southeast Texas online at hcset.com.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
With the AgriLife Extension Hour, we've been talking with Mike Mindick and Megan McNairn with the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Department. Mike and I am Jim Boncho, your host this afternoon. Both Mike and I are Master Gardeners at the Extension Office, and Megan is with Mosquito and Environmental Services at the Woodlands Township. We've been talking a little bit about water conservation, irrigation, rainwater harvesting. And Mike made an interesting point as far as collecting rainwater, some of the benefits of collecting rainwater, some of the reasons that you might want to consider collecting rainwater. Tell us a little bit more about that, Mike.
Sure, I'd be glad to. This is the most important part of rainwater harvesting is why should we do it in the first place? And I touched on it briefly earlier in the discussion. One thing about rainwater harvesting is we're slowing the water down and we're not letting it just run off. So it reduces the amount of erosion that might be occurring across your landscape or across your it doesn't wash away your mulch or your compost. It also keeps in place if you slow the water down so it's not moving quickly, you're also keeping all the fertilizers and pesticides or fungicides you might have on the grass or in your beds. The benefit to that is for you economically, but for the community, you're reducing the amount that's going into the runoff that then goes into your street ditches, and then ultimately it will go into the Gulf of Mexico. And the other part of that is, in addition to the erosion and pollution, we're also reducing the amount of water that's going into the downstream areas. With population increase in Montgomery County, and my gosh, we're exploding in Montgomery County. I think in 2015, Montgomery County was the second fastest growing county in the United States. That's over 500,000 people. Yeah. Wow. First was Fort Bend County, not too far away from us. So we have a lot of people moving into Texas.
And really, when you're talking about rainwater harvesting, it's not necessarily just the small barrels that you're going to put under your downspout, but I really like the concept of slowing the water down, trying to keep it on your property. And at the same time, as Megan was saying, prevent ponding or from continually putting water into the underground sewer systems that are breeding grounds for the mosquitoes.
Yeah, it's really important. We have a lot of other things going on as well, but what you're describing is passive rainwater harvesting.
Right.
In other words, the benefit of passive over active is it's less expensive to do. It's lower maintenance. You can set it up and pretty well just eyeball it as you come in and out of your house or as you walk around your yard. And there's very little effort that needs to be made after that. Maybe once every year or two, you might have to clean something out, but otherwise, it pretty well takes care of itself. Rain barrels or rainwater tanks are a little more hands-on. You have to be watching, make sure you have screens in place to keep the mosquitoes out. You have to make sure that nothing is being eroded to destabilize the tank or barrel. You just need to watch over it a little more closely.
Yeah, and one of the things you had mentioned is at the Extension office, there are at least, I believe, 6 different systems in place out there, demonstrating, all different size tanks and different configurations. You even got some that are portable for small wildlife watering that the Boy Scouts Eagle Projects established out there.
Yeah, Boy Scout Troop 889 in the Woodlands.
Okay.
This was part of their Eagle project, for one of their scouts. And they dropped off those 2 systems. We'll have that set up, and we have the placards on them as well. And they'll be operational if it's raining tomorrow. So
that'll be at our open garden.
That'll be at our open garden.
Going from 9 to 11 tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Okay. Megan, if I was worried about mosquitoes in my yard, what would be one of the 2 or 3 things that I could do to really help minimize that?
Well, I think really if people walked around their yards, I recommend trash day. You're already out looking for things that go in the bin. You got to take the bin to the curb. Just be vigilant. Once a week, go look around and see if anything fell off your house recently in the last windstorm. I quite often find little plastic pieces that belong over utilities. And the minute they're knocked over and they can hold water, all it takes is 7 days in this climate, and you can produce mosquitoes. Getting the kids to clean up their toys. One Frisbee, it's about 6 inches. If that keeps water in it all week, that's 1,000 mosquitoes that you've just bred right there in your yard. But one of the number one culprits that I find, because there's so many of them, are very similar to the size and shape of a Frisbee, but they are plant saucers that people keep under their potted plants. And now most people don't have just one potted plant. And where do they keep these potted plants? They're right by their lounge chair, right by their back door. And these are really efficient mosquito breeders that you don't know it, but that's what they're doing. So,
and I bet you every time your irrigation system turns on, it fills those little saucers with water.
Yeah, or people actually go and water their plants, or just the sheer abundance of rain here. It fills up those plant pots, fills up those saucers, and really, as many gardeners already know, if you fill up that saucer and keep it wet for long enough to breed mosquitoes, it's actually really doing a lot of damage to that plant.
Yeah.
So not only is it rotting out the roots of your plant, it's doing nothing to stop from staining your deck because it's perpetually wet, and it's growing mosquitoes. So I think that's 3 good reasons to get rid of plant saucers right there.
We talked briefly about irrigation and some of the things that you can do is simply looking at your own property and looking for those heads that are spraying into areas that they don't really need to be spraying on. A lot of people overspray on their concrete driveway. They overspray on their back patios. Mike and I have talked numerous times about converting to drip irrigation, and drip irrigation being tied to rainwater harvesting is a concept that is actually practical, whether it's just by gravity only or whether it's with a pump system. Quite often as shrubs grow larger, the spray heads behind them are being blocked. They're not as efficient in their irrigation techniques. So conversion to drip irrigation is something the homeowner can also be involved in and take an active part in.
And it can apply to plants in pots also.
Yes, it can. Yes, it can. If you were to look, or if I were to come out and look at someone's yard and look for an area that I could do rainwater collection, Mike, passive or active, where do you think I would start looking?
Well, I would start first looking at your downspouts. Where are they set up? And then kind of fan out, stand by your downspout, look out across your yard, and see what you're able to do as far as moving that water to the location where you have the most need. For example, I have a nice raised downspout coming off it's an overflow line coming off my rain barrel. It's about 4 inches off the ground and extends out about 30 feet. As my rain barrel gets full, it's not only is cleaning up, self-cleaning system is what you'll see out there at the extension, but it's also moving all the debris and not that there's that much, but all the things coming off the bottom, but all the water that's spilling out of it now goes into the beds that are underneath the eaves of the house that normally don't receive much rainwater at all.
Right. You've described it before as a downspout diffuser, right, so that it takes that hard stream of water, softens the velocity of it, and spreads it evenly over a landscape bed.
Right. We have one row of holes on the bottom that are about 5 inches apart. They're 3/8 inch diameter, so they're not tiny holes. They're suitable for getting a nice gentle water flow out.
Right.
And the water comes off these downspouts unbelievably fast. And if you don't have it on a concrete base by itself, it'll start putting holes in your landscape, and that's not something you want. If you run it into this diffuser that's 3 or 4 inches off the ground, a couple things are going on. One, you're distributing it across the length of your bed fairly equally, and you're also giving it a gentle flow, and it slows it down, gives it time to soak in, and keeps all the plant nutrients and everything around them, and it works really well. But again, putting it somewhere where you're going to where it needs it, and different plants use or require different amounts of water, so you wouldn't want to put this into a cactus garden.
Yeah.
So you look at the plants and you look at what you might have available or what you might need to water more than others, and that's where I would put it.
Right.
The rainwater is great. It's slightly acidic. You'll be picking up bird debris or dead lizards or whatever coming off your roof. It's not something you'd want to drink. So while rainwater is clean, when it comes off your roof, it's not so clean.
Yeah.
So don't put it in your mouth or don't drink it until you've purified it or sanitized it. That's a really critical step. So that's why we say use your rainwater that you collect for irrigation or your plants. Building fish ponds is great. Aquaponics is great. There are a lot of opportunities. Flushing toilets are good too. Just make sure it's filtered because you don't want to see anything floating in your toilets if you're flushing your toilet.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be there.
It gets down to that personal choice, doesn't it?
It does.
Some of the demonstrations, again, I think, Megan, you've got one coming up on the 12th. It's water conservation.
It's Smarter About Water seminar.
Okay.
So there's a conservation angle, but there's also just some broader education, how the soil is important to function in conserving water, and lots of great talks. Lunch is provided, and it's
where's it being held?
It's being held at the
emergency.
The Woodlands Emergency Training Center.
Thank you.
It's from 8 to 2:30 this coming Saturday. Sorry,
Next
Saturday the 12th. Not a week from tomorrow. It's free, and lunch is provided, like I said. But we do encourage you to register because space is limited. So if you go onto the Woodlands Township website and you go to the calendar function, you will see it there. So it's called the Smarter About Water seminar.
Okay. And again, we've got the open gardens this Saturday, Mike, at the AgriLife Extension office.
Right. Just across from the Lone Star Convention.
Just across, okay, it's 9020 Airport Boulevard. And the systems that we have in place will demonstrate not only drip irrigation, but we have also some turf demonstration areas that we've just installed, showing different methods of irrigating with spray pop-up heads, with mini rotors, which are a little more efficient, and also with the subsurface drip irrigation underneath the lawn. So those are all projects that have just come online. Be very interested in seeing people come out and take a look at it and ask questions. And just visit the gardens in general.
And also, if you see something, if you're visiting and you see something that you'd like to see added to it, go ahead and speak up and mention it to one of our people that are roaming around, and we'll see what we can do about that.
That's right. It's a wonderful resource. What do you think, guys? You want to take a break for just a minute, and we'll come back and pick up where we left off.
Listen in Mondays at noon to hear Conroe news from local nonprofits, businesses, upcoming events, Conroe Park events, news stories, and information that matters to you with your host, Margie Taylor of Taylorized PR. For more information about being a guest, visit irlonestar.com/Conroe Culture.
Did you know there are more than 790 abused and neglected children currently in foster care in Montgomery County? Will you help make a difference? I'm Allie Stevens with Casa Child Advocates of Montgomery County. We train and support volunteers to be the voice of children in the foster care system. Kids are removed from their home because of abuse and neglect, and we need volunteers just like you to advocate for these children. To learn more about becoming an advocate, please visit CasaSpeaksForKids.com. That's CasaSpeaksForKids.com.
You're going to need me.
You're going to need us.
All of us.
You're going to need our help with your water, your air, your food.
You're going to need our determination, our compassion.
You're going to need the next generation of leaders to face the challenges the future will bring.
And we promise we'll be there when you need us.
Today, 4-H is growing the next generation of leaders.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
Thank you, and we are back. This is the Lone Star Community Radio. This is the Extension Hour. My name is Jim Buncho. I'm here with Mike Mendick and Megan McNairn. We're talking about water conservation, basically, and the benefits and attributes of water conservation and how it relates to mosquitoes, also mosquito population. One of the things I wanted to mention was the defined irrigation schedules that we have here in the Woodlands and in Montgomery County. We are not under severe drought conditions right now, but there are water restrictions, and it is limiting as far as how many days of the week that you can irrigate. Currently in the Woodlands, there is an even-odd schedule. It allows you to irrigate between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, depending upon whether you're an even number address or an odd number address. It's either Tuesday and Friday, or Wednesday and Saturday. And in Conroe, they've actually, under a green condition, you can water any 2 days of the week between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. But as those changes occur and our summers get a little bit drier, be sure that you're made aware of current irrigation schedules. Mike had mentioned just before the break just how much rainwater can be collected and some of the calculations that we might go through, and maybe what some of the restrictions are in your local community for rainwater harvesting.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. One of the concerns people have is this really worth it? How much water can I get off my rooftop anyway? And we've got a lot of people that have studied this, and what they found is that if you have, an easy way to think of it is this way. If you have a roof area that's about 2,000 square feet, that includes your garage roof surface and your house roof surface. If you work that out, and you can go online and get the information for you, but basically what it works out to, a 2,000 square foot roof with a 1 inch rainfall will collect 1,000 gallons of water. And that's just coming off your roof. Now, we get close to 50 inches of rain here in Conroe and in Montgomery County, 50 inches of rain. So 50 times 1,000 gallons is 50,000 gallons of water that's delivered to your house. I mean, there's no charge for that delivery. You just have to figure out what you can do with it. Can you collect it, or can you put it somewhere where it's going to do more good than let it go down the street and into the gutter and into the Gulf of Mexico? Once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, it's pretty well gone for us. We can't do anything more with it. We have to wait for it to evaporate and then float over the land and then precipitate out as rain.
And it rains again, yeah.
Then we can go after it again. But so it's, and we've got a lot of water that goes into the Gulf. So if we can collect it, what we can on our properties, on our home and driveways or whatever, and make use of that, we're well ahead of the game, and nobody's going to be disadvantaged by that.
No, and there's no shortage of water. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. There's no shortage of rainwater. If we try to capture it, we're not going to deplete the water in our streams and in our rivers and in our lakes.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, the Texas state legislature studied that because that is a concern in other areas of the country for other states like Colorado and other places. And the study that the legislature did came out with, I think if you look at all the water going into the streams, it's or all the rainwater, if you looked at 10% of the house rooftops in Texas converted to rainwater harvesting, it would amount to 0.03% of the total water. 0.03%, not even 1%.
Yeah.
Now, the amount of water that's flowing into the Gulf, it amounts to 0.3%. It's more, but it's still so insignificant. The state legislature in Texas decided that, listen, we'd rather have people interested in catching rainwater and also interested in conserving water. What better way to do it than have their own water conservation program in their house with a rain barrel? So they're encouraging people to catch rainwater at any scale. Right now, there's no limitation on it, unless you're in a HOA or a community that has covenants that need to be followed.
Correct. And Megan was mentioning that there are actually some rebates or some incentives in place for rainwater harvesting and also for irrigation review. I believe that the Woodlands Joint Powers Association offers a free service to come out and look at your irrigation system through the Wise Guys. And they, I believe, also offer some dollar matching up to 50%. It's $150 or 50% of the total cost for improving your irrigation system, either through rainwater harvesting techniques or through improvements to your irrigation system.
Yes, I believe both of those are correct. I would encourage listeners to consult the WJPA website for specifics. One of the Wise Guys for the irrigation program will be at the Smarter About Water seminar on Saturday, the 12th.
On the 12th, okay.
And people can register for free on the Woodlands Township website for that seminar. But there's also, within the Woodlands itself, I don't work for covenants, but I believe there are restrictions on the number of rain barrels you can have. I believe it's 2, and they have to be, they can be of any size, but they have to be under 6
feet tall. Yeah,
that's correct. And located in your backyard.
Right.
And but still, the township does encourage its residents to participate in rainwater collection.
And again, really, the topic is water conservation and the appreciation that you have for the water that's delivered to your door, and conserving it and being aware of how much water you do use.
If I can add a comment to what Megan just described, the restrictions for the Woodlands and for that matter Conroe as well are such that there's no problem if you go to passive rainwater harvesting, as long as it's landscaping and everything else looks fine.
Right.
You can put a diffuser on your downspout if you have a leaf ejector or a leaf screen of some kind to separate the leaves out from this long tube that goes in the front next to your house, or if it can drain away from it. But you can go ahead and use that for irrigating different flower beds and things like that. And it won't appear as a barrel, and you can paint it the same color as your mulch or your house. Your brickwork, for example, that's what I did at home. And most people, while drive past it, they won't even see it.
You know, one of the tie-ins also, and I failed to mention this, is every irrigation system with an automatic controller should be attached to a rain switch, a functioning rain switch, so that in theory, when it rains, the irrigation system does not go off and you're not watering while the water's pouring down from the sky. So many times people will have that either disabled or it will have fallen off the fence. So make sure that if you do get a chance, you go out, you look at your spray heads, you're trying to monitor the efficiency of your system. Look for a functioning rain switch. Make sure you know how to use it.
How do you test it?
Well, a rain switch is generally connected either by hardwire to the controller. It's got a tiny little button or shaft on the top of the rain switch. You literally hold down on it while the controller is running a zone, and it should shut that zone off. If it's wireless, make sure the batteries are functioning. Again, the same process. Rain switches are basically designed as 3 or 6 pieces of leather. The leather swells when it gets wet. It pushes down on a switch, turns the system off. As the leather dries out, it shrinks, the system comes back on.
If you have a rain switch that's on a second story way up high on a fence or something like that, and you just wait till it's raining and try to turn your sprinkler system on, and it doesn't come on, then you know it's working? Or
it may not be that simple. I would actually have it in an area that you could inspect. If it's up on the second floor or second story eave of your house, quite often it's not getting the direct rain on that switch to make it function properly. If it's sitting underneath the canopy of a heavy tree, it may not function properly also. If it's laying sideways in your flower bed, it's certainly not working. So again, it's personal responsibility, walking around, taking a look at your property, turning those saucers upside down so that they're not collecting water, making sure the Frisbee is not having standing water in it. And
clean up your toys. Clean up the kids' toys, but also clean up the adults' toys. As gardeners, we all leave out our big wheelbarrows and various things that various 5-gallon buckets for various reasons, all filled with water. So it's great to go around while you're checking out your rain sensor. Please go around and make sure that you're turning over anything that's collecting water in your yard.
Does the Woodlands Township Environmental Services provide inspection services for mosquito abatement or mosquito issues?
We have an active mosquito surveillance and education program. And yes, definitely, we are always available to talk with residents about any mosquito concerns they might have. Yeah. We encourage them to go to the website, the Woodlands Township-tx.gov /mosquito info. And there is a great cheat sheet for walking around your property and all the little places that we would look. And we are more than happy to look with you and make sure we're finding those cryptic spots like your meter box, your French drain, your clogged gutter, things that are sort of out of sight, out of mind, that might be breeding mosquitoes, because the last thing we want is for people to be breeding their own mosquitoes in their own yards. And the 2 species that we're most concerned about with our surveillance program that can carry disease also don't fly that far away from their breeding grounds. So if we can eliminate those breeding grounds around people's houses, then we're all a lot safer also from mosquito-borne disease.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned the flight path of mosquitoes is maybe 200 to 300 yards.
Yeah, about 600 feet if they are well fed and watered. And so that means mammals for blood meals to make eggs, and then water for breeding sites.
Okay.
Because it's a misnomer. Only females bite because they need protein to make eggs. And so that's why they're using us. It's not for their own feeding. It's to make more mosquitoes.
Okay. Well, again, we want to remind you to come out to the open gardens this Saturday from 9 to 11 at the AgriLife Extension Office. We want to remind you of 2 upcoming seminars, one of them on the 11th, which is on rainwater harvesting, one of them on the 12th, which is on water conservation. And we certainly do appreciate the interest. Mike, any final comments in the last minute?
Well, we still have another section after this, right?
I'm not sure. We do indeed.
Okay. So I'll hold my comments until the next section.
All right. Well, very good. We're going to go ahead and take a break then, and we'll be back very shortly.
Hispanic Chamber Connections with Dr. Carlos Sanchez, president of the Woodlands Conroe Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, featuring event announcements, member highlights, and more. Tuesdays at 1 p.m., broadcasting from the heart of Conroe, Texas on irlonestar.com and Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1.
Have a legal question? Are you a resident of Montgomery County? Call 281-645-6344 to talk to a volunteer attorney from the Woodlands Bar Association. We answer the phones on the first Monday of every month at 281-645-6344 from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. to provide general legal information and information about legal resources to Montgomery County residents.
Family and community health programs provide science-based education designed to improve the overall health and wellness of individuals, families, and communities. Developed by experts and delivered locally, topics include child and adult health, nutrition, child care, financial management, passenger and community safety, and building strong families, all encouraging lifelong health and well-being for every person, every family, and every community. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's radio station with talk, music, weather, and traffic for Montgomery County. Have a question or comment about one of our shows? Want to know how to reach a host? Just contact the station at irlonestar.com or call in and leave a message at 936-647-3776. Get involved with your community with Lone Star Community Radio.
From the beginning, the main purpose of the Cooperative Extension Service has been to change human behavior by teaching people how to apply the results of scientific research. By utilizing a holistic, multi-level approach, Extension family and community health programs encourage health and well-being for everyone. Addressing values, concerns, and needs with reliable science-based information, Extension programs help people lead healthier lives. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
And welcome back to the Lone Star Community Radio. This is the Texas AgriLife Extension Hour. I'm Jim Buncho here with Mike Mendick and Megan McNairn. We're talking about water conservation, mosquitoes, and rainwater harvesting. Megan, just before we broke, you were talking about mosquitoes. And tell us a little bit more about what we can do or what types of mosquitoes we're most concerned about in this area.
Good question. There are almost 50 species of mosquitoes in this area. And fortunately for us, there's only very few that can carry disease. And so primarily programs like the Woodlands Township Environmental Services Mosquito Surveillance and Education Program, and as well as our colleagues in Montgomery County Precinct 3 and Harris County, are primarily looking for Culex mosquitoes. We affectionately shorten them up to quinks because it's a very long species name, but they are the ones that can carry West Nile. And they're the ones that we're most concerned about because we do have West Nile in this county.
And the spray programs, who's actually in charge of the spray programs in this area?
Each precinct in Montgomery County is responsible for its own chemical abatement program. And so we partner quite closely in the Woodlands Township with Montgomery County Precinct 3 as they cover the majority of the township. But the other commissioners have their own spray programs throughout Montgomery County.
Okay. And without being real controversial, what is your personal opinion about the mosquito sprays in your own personal backyard to prevent mosquitoes?
Well, I encourage all residents of every precinct to practice integrated mosquito management, which is what we do at the township and what we do on a regional level with Precinct 3 is we respond to diseased positive pools of mosquitoes with chemical sprays. And there are numerous other steps, more effective steps, less costly steps to both the environment and your pocketbook that you can take before having to resort to spraying chemicals.
Right. So it's eliminating those pockets of water, standing water.
If we can eliminate mosquitoes when they are concentrated and immobile, such as they are in the water, then we are way further ahead than trying to chase them around the yard with a can of cutter. So I really encourage people, if you think about one Frisbee overturned, filling with rainwater week after week, I'll get to it, I'll make the kids clean it up. Every single week that Frisbee is producing 1,000 mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And so if you think about some of the larger things you have in your yard or puddles that are persistent that for more than 7 days, if whatever it is, if it's more than 7 days, it'll produce mosquitoes. So why not be a super mosquito slayer and turn out that water, and you could be potentially getting rid of millions of mosquitoes if you had a whole wheelbarrow full of water or a kayak that's the wrong direction, divots in tarps, bags of potting soil that you didn't quite use the whole thing, and then there's a little low spot that can collect rainwater. All of these little places are worth hunting down in our yards, really thinking like a mosquito and getting rid of that water, and then you don't have to chase them down with chemicals. And if there are places in your yard that are prone to puddling that you can't really do anything about as far as correcting the drainage, or if you do things like collect rainwater through through a barrel system, why not have a little bit more insurance and put in mosquito dunks, which is a trade name for BTI, Bacillus thuringiensis israeliensis, which is the naturally occurring bacterium.
Yeah.
Fantastic for killing mosquito larvae while they're still in the water.
And Mike, you were talking about some of the incentives also for rainwater harvesting. As I understand it, there is no sales tax charged on rainwater equipment here in the state of Texas.
Right. It's called, check out the Texas Tax Code 151.355. And if you look that up on the internet, you'll be able to read the information on it. But basically, it's a sales tax exemption, which exempts rainwater harvesting equipment, services, and supplies. Generally, this would be worth it if it's a large operation that you're getting ready to set
right.
up, where you have tanks and maybe a pump setup as well. Those are all tied together. If you're buying a rain barrel, I don't think you'll be very successful in going to a box store and trying to convince the salesman that you shouldn't charge sales tax on it.
Actually, I have done that, but yes,
okay.
You can.
Well, it's good today's pain, isn't it? Yeah. So I don't know that it'd be worth your time in that case, but
right.
You can try.
Yeah.
But that is true. And also there's a House Bill 645 that was passed in 2003 for Texas, which says the homeowners associations can't keep you from putting rain barrels in, but they can have restrictions as to how you disguise it, so it's not visible from the street.
Right. So again, in the woodlands, the typical rainwater harvesting system would need to be in the backyard, less than 6 feet, so it's below the fence line. But believe it or not, if you could, manage to put a 1,000-gallon tank in your backyard, attractively screened either with, cedar pickets or however it may be, that's a significant amount of water that you can use for watering plants during drought areas or drought conditions, or just redirecting that water so it's not running down your driveway.
Really important.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And those systems can be seen at the AgriLife Extension office.
Right. We have several of those projects available. You can look at that. Additionally, we also have at the Extension office that'll be on display tomorrow. We have one system that's really unique. It's a solar panel that's what drives the timers and the ball valve that opens and closes. And basically, people can come out and they can see this standalone system and study it, take all the photographs. We'll be waiting.
Well, we've covered lots of information, lots of topics today. I want to certainly thank you guys for coming out. It's always a pleasure. Again, AgriLife is one of those best kept secrets. We're lucky to do what we can do and just continue doing it. So come out and see us at our open gardens this Saturday from 9 to 11. On Friday, the 11th, we're going to have rainwater harvesting class at the Extension office. And on Saturday, the 12th, we're